There's a quiet truth about female unhappiness that most men never dare to face, as if speaking it would shatter something fragile in the air. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that reflects not just her complaints, but the ancient machinery underneath them. Before you label this as bitterness, understand it comes from watching thousands of love stories crumble in the same predictable rhythm. Some women carry a program written long before you ever appeared, one that transforms daily life into a game no man can win. You apologize for storms you didn't cause, you bend into shapes that shrink you. But what if the emptiness you're trying to fill has no bottom? And here's the twist most men never see. The dissatisfaction isn't reacting to you, it's orbiting inside her, waiting. You can spend years adjusting the furniture in a burning house, but the fire is coming from within. If these words make you uneasy, stay. This channel exists for those who prefer clarity over comfort. Listen closely to the murmurs of married men. Nothing I do is enough. She frowns at flowers. Wrong colour. A restaurant. Wrong mood. Help with chores. It's not done correctly. Don't help. You're lazy. Work harder. You're absent. Stay home. You're not ambitious. It's a labyrinth where every door leads to blame. I lived that cycle. Different faces, different smiles, different histories, identically unhappy endings. First I wasn't romantic enough, then I was too soft, then too dominant, then not considerate enough. How can one man be every opposite at once? Because the trigger wasn't my behaviour, it was a preloaded script unfolding regardless of my choices. These women were unhappy before, during and after me. Their storm wasn't born in my sky. So ask yourself, how many times will you reshape yourself to please the void? But the roots go deeper than behaviour. Around half of our emotional tendencies are written into our biology. Some women are wired to see shadows where others see light, to scan for flaws instead of blessings. Their baseline is dissatisfaction. Their normal is complaint. I've watched generations pass this down, grandmother to mother to daughter, each inheriting a lens that bends toward disappointment. They could live in paradise and still fixate on the crack in the marble. This predisposition hides beneath polite smiles, waiting. Yet genetics is only the blueprint. Childhood lays the bricks. A distant or cold father seeds distrust, resentment toward the masculine. She grows into the belief that men will always fail her. So she selects men who do, or pushes good ones until they break. And then she points to the rubble as proof. Do you see the circle tightening? Meanwhile, another thread weaves itself silently through her mother's sighs. A girl watches the woman who raised her complain endlessly about her husband, her life, her fate. That atmosphere becomes home, familiar like a smell she can't wash out. She swears she'll never be like her mother, until one day she hears her voice coming out of her own mouth. The same accusations, the same tone, the same narrative of deprivation. Humans choose the familiar, even if it hurts. Why? Because happiness requires new roads, and new roads require courage, and courage often sleeps. So she recreates the misery she knows, calls it normal, calls it love. But have you ever wondered why comfort can feel so suffocating when it doesn't match the script you grew up with? If you've reached this point, you're not seeking dopamine, you're seeking truth. That's what this space is built for. Then comes the cruel collision between fantasy and reality. Raised on princess movies, flawless romance, curated social feeds, many women enter relationships believing life should be a movie scene without end. Roses, diamonds, candlelit whispers. But adulthood brings bills, chores, stress, human imperfections. And when reality doesn't fix the wounds she carries from childhood, she looks outward for someone to blame. She upgrades houses, incomes, dates, attention. and still feels hollow. When she finally gets what she asked for, the target moves again. Happiness remains a mirage she chases across sand, and nobody tells her the truth. You cannot outpace emptiness. It rides inside your ribs. Projection is the ghost in the room. When internal emptiness stirs, she points to external flaws. He needs to make more money. He does, still unhappy. We need a bigger house. They buy it, still unhappy. I need more attention. He gives it. Now he's clingy. The problem shapeshifts, always slightly outside reach. But what if the real wound never lived in the world, but in her? Because how can you soothe someone whose hunger isn't for love, but for healing? And healing demands self-confrontation. Not more furniture, more trips, more validation. Yet most choose distraction over depth. Would you? When you understand this pattern, something shifts inside you. The burden you've been carrying, guilt, confusion, shrinking yourself smaller and smaller, begins to loosen. You realize you were trying to plug holes in a sinking ship with your hands. Her unhappiness is hers to face, not yours to absorb, and until she looks inward, no upgrade will ever satisfy her. But if you keep sacrificing yourself at her altar, you'll become the ghost of the man you once were. Do you really want to vanish for someone who can't be pleased? There's a hidden weight modern relationships carry, and most men never see where it comes from. The distance between what she wants and what life can realistically offer becomes a slow poison. Social media turns fantasies into perceived standards. Lamborghinis, penthouses, endless vacations. She scrolls through curated dreams until she believes they're normal. Meanwhile, she married a teacher, a mechanic, an accountant, a decent man with tired eyes and honest work. Yet she feels robbed, as if the universe owes her more. She doesn't see the stress in his shoulders, the long hours, the quiet sacrifices he makes just to hold a middle-class life together. And still, when her friend posts photos from Dubai, she looks at him like he's the reason she's missing out. But what if the real thief isn't him? What if it's expectation itself? If this tension rings somewhere deep, stay. Here, we choose clarity over comfort. Even when she gets what she thought she needed, the dissatisfaction doesn't end. There's something psychologists might call a devaluation mechanism, though she would never recognize it. The moment something becomes hers, its sparkle fades. Single, she wanted a boyfriend. With the boyfriend, she desperately wanted marriage. Married, she suddenly craves a more exciting man. It's a relentless cycle. Curly hair, then straight hair. Bigger breasts, then another flaw. A career, then motherhood. Motherhood, then the yearning for a career. Nothing outside truly changes, only her perception does. And when she looks at you and sees boredom where she once saw fascination, she swears you're the one who transformed. Isn't it strange how someone can accuse you of becoming the man they slowly imagined you into? Envy and comparison are now more accessible than oxygen. Every woman has a window into thousands of lives, polished and filtered. She sees gifts, renovations, weight loss, new cars. Each piece becomes evidence that her own existence is smaller, duller, insufficient. She never notices what others envy in her. She only sees the gap. Sarah's husband took her to Paris. You took me to dinner. Never mind the infidelity Sarah hides, the marriage counselling behind the scenes. Maria's husband helps with the kids constantly. Ignore that he's unemployed and has nowhere else to be. Social media overstimulates longing while starving gratitude. When you compare your raw reality to someone else's highlight reel, you will always lose. How long can someone stare at illusion before they start to resent reality itself? If you're still here, you're not chasing dopamine, you're chasing truth. That's why this channel exists. Most men don't realize another layer beneath the unhappiness. performance. Many women wear masks because they've been conditioned since childhood to play roles, pretend to be low maintenance, pretend to love housework, pretend to be sexual on command, pretend to be agreeable when control is the real instinct. But masks are heavy. Pretending day after day is exhausting, and when the mask finally slips after marriage, resentment erupts. She's furious at how long she performed, furious you didn't see through her, furious that authenticity might cost affection. She's unhappy not because life betrayed her, but because she betrayed herself first. But how do you peel off a face you fear isn't lovable? Immaturity has silently grown with each generation. Many women enter relationships without knowing what they want. Only what they're told to want by family, friends, influencers. They've never built personal values, goals, or identity outside external approval. So they date for optics, marry for validation, chase lifestyles that photograph well, and when emptiness follows, they're surprised. These women lack boundaries, absorbing emotions around them like sponges. Their life becomes a collage of everyone else's expectations. Eventually they wake up drowning in exhaustion, living a script written by voices that aren't theirs, and they whisper, "Why am I unhappy?" But how can someone feel fulfilled in a life they never truly chose? Then there's a newer, sharper programming, superiority. Modern culture tells women they are queens, goddesses, prizes. Men should worship them, provide endlessly, feel grateful for their presence. But here's the paradox. You cannot respect what you see as beneath you, and without respect, love collapses. I once knew a woman who genuinely called men animals, dogs, simple creatures. She demanded worship, obedience, sacrifice. Yet she wondered why her relationships felt hollow, why intimacy evaporated. When you see your partner as inferior, connection dies. There is no romance in a hierarchy, only transaction, and transaction leaves you empty. Have you ever tried to love someone you secretly look down on? Here's the quiet tragedy behind all this. None of it was designed maliciously. It evolves from wounds, conditioning, fear, but when unchecked, it destroys good men, stable futures, peaceful homes. Women recreate chaos because chaos feels familiar. Peace feels suspicious. Stability feels like the first breath before drowning. And so, drama becomes a heartbeat. But consider this. If happiness terrifies you, will you always sabotage it? There's a strange kind of heartbreak many men never learn to name. It happens when you date someone who seems to actively dismantle the very thing she claims to crave. She whispers about stability, then lights small fires across the relationship. She begs for peace, then stirs arguments from dust. She asks for love, then pulls back the moment you offer it. It's not calculated cruelty. It's programming. Childhood taught her that chaos is safer than calm, that tension is more familiar than tenderness. So when genuine happiness arrives, she feels something is off, like silence in a house that's always creaked. Peace feels suspicious, temporary, like the quiet before abandonment. And so she attacks the very structure that protects her. You watch a woman destroy a good relationship, not because she wants pain, but because she's convinced joy is a setup. How do you love someone who fears the very thing they're starving for? Modern comparison culture pours gasoline on this fire. It's not just imagining a better partner, it's seeing curated perfection at every scroll. Engagement announcements, newborn photos, promotions, vacations, transformations. Each glimpse becomes evidence that she chose wrong. Suddenly, her perfectly decent life feels like a cheap knockoff. Add the ticking of biology, louder each year. There's a narrow window for marriage, children, family. And whether she meets those milestones or misses them, dissatisfaction blooms. Too soon? Pressure? On time? Underwhelming? Too late? Regret? I once spoke to a woman in her 30s, Successful, safe, respected, and miserable. I followed the plan I made at 20, she said, but the plan was wrong. She traded community for independence, family for career. Now the door she wants is locked from the other side. When the map is flawed, every destination feels like failure. Then there's the testing, the endless boundary pushing that masquerades as security seeking. She pokes, provokes, withdraws just to see if you'll chase. It's not malicious, it's fear wearing makeup, but each test strains trust. Each manipulation dulls connection. Drama becomes a substitute for intimacy, like turning up the volume when the music isn't good. She confuses intensity with depth, conflict with passion. What she doesn't see is that she's planting seeds of resentment in soil that once held potential. And when the garden withers, she points to the dying leaves instead of her own hands. All the while, lingering in the background is childhood's fairy tale propaganda. She was told she's special, magical, destined for a prince. But grown men have morning breath and dirty laundry. Castles look like apartments. Happily ever after looks like routine. No movie shows the dishes. Economics adds another trapdoor. A generation was promised they could have everything: career, romance, freedom, wealth, family, adventure, all without trade-offs, but life is a ledger. Advance one, column, and another shrinks. Career success often demands time away from children. Family focus can cap professional growth. Financial security may cost spontaneity. But acknowledging these truths feels like betrayal. So dissatisfaction becomes the safer choice. I've seen career women ache for children and stay-at-home mothers ache for careers. I've seen women doing both weep under exhaustion, convinced they're failing in every direction. When perfection is the standard, everything feels like losing. The myth of having it all quietly transformed into not having enough. How can anyone be content when every version of life seems incomplete? Here's a darker twist. For many women, unhappiness becomes identity. Misery bonds friendships, earns sympathy, excuses responsibility. Complaints become currency. Victimhood becomes validation. After years of this pattern, happiness feels foreign, uncomfortable, even suspicious. Who would she be without something to lament? Try fixing one complaint and another appears. Patch one wound and a new bruise surfaces. She's not chasing solutions, she's protecting familiarity. Because when you've lived in a storm long enough, sunshine feels like a trapdoor. So she rejects peace to preserve the story she knows. It's not about problems, it's about continuity. Misery becomes the glue that holds her self-concept together. Imagine trying to love someone whose favourite blanket is cold rain. Therapy culture complicates this further. When used well, it builds accountability. But in the wrong hands, it becomes a weaponized dictionary of blame. Instead of learning gratitude, she learns new vocabulary for hurt. Instead of accepting imperfections, she diagnoses them in others. Instead of self-reflection, she practices self-absolution. I met a couple where the woman had spent 10 years in therapy and grew unhappier every year, not because she wasn't improving, but because she learned to reframe every disagreement as trauma, every memory she disliked as gaslighting, every emotional need as someone else's failure. The more she learned the language of wounds, the more skillfully she avoided looking inward. It's easier to label a partner emotionally unavailable than admit fear of vulnerability. And so, with each session, she sharpened her tools, never noticing she was cutting the wrong target. The tragedy is silent. Most of these patterns are unconscious. These women don't wake up thinking, "Let me sabotage my life today." They wake up terrified of loss, bored by peace, hungry for validation, haunted by comparisons, trained by childhood myths, pressured by biology, suffocated by perfectionism, and armed with the vocabulary to avoid responsibility. And the men beside them wilt trying to solve a problem that isn't theirs. They tighten boundaries, then loosen them. Apologize, then apologize again. They try deeper affection, then more space, then more words, then more silence. Nothing works. Because the issue isn't external, it's interior architecture. You cannot renovate a house built on fear without touching the foundation. But the foundation is exactly what she refuses to acknowledge. Here's the subtle question whispering beneath all of this. What if she's more afraid of peace than pain? Pain is familiar, predictable, even comforting. Peace is responsibility. Peace means you can't blame storms anymore. Peace means you have to face yourself. And for many, that's the scariest mirror of all. So whenever happiness knocks, she opens the door just wide enough to stare at it, and then slams the lock back into place. There are answers to female unhappiness, but they live in places most modern women refuse to visit. They require looking in the mirror without filters, naming flaws without excuses, lowering expectations until they match the world rather than fantasies. Gratitude, meaning, imperfection, none of these sparkle online. They won't earn applause from friends or validation from strangers, but they work. The truth is, happiness often arrives only after repeated heartbreak forces introspection. After blaming every man who loved her, she eventually notices the common shadow in all those stories, herself. Only then does the pattern emerge, but most choose the easier path. It's simpler to demand more than to appreciate, simpler to complain than to change. When society whispers, "You're perfect," why lift the tools of growth? Why admit the enemy isn't him, but the unexamined world within? Men suffer quietly under this dynamic, their devotion slowly becoming their undoing. I've watched good men pour themselves into bottomless wells, believing more love could fix what was never theirs to fix. They strip away their identity piece by piece, personality, ambition, hobbies, hoping she'll finally smile. Instead, they apologize for existing, walking like ghosts through homes that once felt safe. They learn to avoid breathing too loudly, fearing another wave of dissatisfaction they can't predict. Depression stretches across their shoulders, anxiety chews at their confidence. They try harder, do more, become better, but the void refuses to fill. How long can a heart pump into someone who bleeds endlessly and never stops cutting the wound open? The bitter truth many men can't swallow is this: you cannot manufacture happiness for someone who resents it. If she was unhappy before you, she'll be unhappy beside you, and she'll be unhappy after you. Your love might soften moments, but it cannot rewrite childhood. You're not a surgeon for wounds you cannot see. And when she chooses blame over responsibility, resentment becomes gravity. Her unhappiness was never about you. You were simply close enough to absorb the fallout. Men waste years believing they lacked the right gesture, the right words, the right timing. But the problem wasn't effort, it was origin. Happiness cannot be installed from the outside, it must be built from within. Does this condemn all women to misery? Of course not. Many carry joy like a skill they learned, practiced, cultivated. But others inherit programming like a virus, wounds from fathers, wounds from mothers, impossible expectations whispered by culture, sharpened by comparison. These programs shape how they see the world, distorting joy into threat, turning peace into boredom. And loving someone with these patterns is like trying to embrace smoke. You must understand, her unhappiness isn't your fault, it isn't your responsibility, and no degree of devotion gives you the power to fix it. Ask yourself the real questions. Was she already content before you arrived? Does she nurture happiness in other areas of life? Does she take ownership of her emotions or outsource them? Most men never ask those questions. They dive in blind. But the answers matter. If she's never known gratitude, how can she express it? If she's never carried joy, how can she share it? If she perceives imperfection as betrayal, how can you possibly soothe her? Some women believe happiness is something to be given to them, not something they must construct. But the world doesn't operate like that, and the longer she clings to that myth, the more dangerous her longing becomes. Not outwardly violent, but quietly corrosive, dissolving everything you are until you become a stranger to yourself. You need to recognize a brutal psychological law. You cannot fix what you did not break. Trying to save someone from their own reflections will drown you. Her unhappiness belongs to her biography, not your presence. Childhood wrote the first chapter, culture added the second, comparison writes the third. You are cast in the fourth without audition, and unless she chooses to rewrite the story, the ending never changes. Many men lose themselves inside this cycle, waking up years later wondering how they became so small. Understanding this truth doesn't magically heal anything. It won't make her happy. It won't make the wounds vanish. But it frees you from a burden your spine was never meant to carry. When you stop trying to be her cure, you regain your shape. You remember who you were before exhaustion hollowed you out. Her happiness is, and always will be, her responsibility. And until she chooses the difficult work of self-confrontation, she will remain unhappy regardless of who stands beside her. You could be kinder, richer, more attentive, more romantic, and still fail the shifting test she can't articulate. Because the test isn't for you, it's for her, and she hasn't learned how to pass it yet.